All right, all of you freedom-loving boys and girls, whomever you are, wherever you are on this beautiful blue marble that we call Terra, Earth, third rock from the sun. Mark, Centerline Systems, welcome to the live stream. Hey, we have a special guest tonight. I hope you guys are strapped in. I just got a little mineral water with some juice. You do you, but you might want to strap in. This is going to be a good conversation. I'm going to get him on here real quickly. He's limited in time. And I want to make this 30 minutes worthwhile, but I'm going to tell just a real quick story before we get just housekeeping type of things. So I do have one of those SRDPs that I showed off in the last live stream. I have one of those still remaining. If anyone's interested, it's the Coyote Brown and Black. If no one jumps on it, then I'll probably throw it in with our charity auction, which is my next part, which is next week. So 1 week from today, well, I've got a guest lined up for Monday and a guest lined up for Thursday. But on Thursday, we're going to announce the charity auction. I should have everything worked out on the website, all the details. And that's going to be really a community-based podcast. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go see the live stream we did with Readiness Training Group. And those men and women are doing some kick-ass things. And I want to step in and try to support them if at all possible. And then on that note, Patrick, are you ready? Give me a thumbs up. You can't hear you yet. Just give me a thumbs up. I can see you. Thumbs up or thumbs down if you're ready, Patrick. Thumbs up. All right, we're going to bring Patrick on here. If you have watched any of our Mission Critical podcast, you know exactly who Patrick is. If you didn't watch any of the Mission Criticals because it was, oh, it's too scary, it's too political, which I didn't think at all, then you're in for a treat because this guy knows how to plan. He knows how to prepare. This guy's squared away. Without further ado, Patrick, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you're willing to share, and then let's just jump right into it, sir.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for having me back again. Hello to everybody.
Hey, this is a completely potentially different audience, Mission Critical versus Centerline. So
absolutely. So I met Mark several years ago. I think right after 9/11. We're both on the military side. We were in a reconnaissance platoon together, and then ended up both working for CIA a few years later, and then linked up again. So my background, I started off as a Marine back in the late 80s, did the first Gulf War, switched into the 90s, worked a little bit with 20th Group, which is an SF, Army Special Forces, for those who aren't tracking that unit. Left that, became a police officer. 9/11 happened. I said, I can't give tickets anymore and, rescue, squirrels out of houses, that type of thing. So off I went. And that's where Mark and I kind of converged. Since then, I've just kind of worked in the intelligence world on the tactical side and just the gathering of information. And, I still kind of do that as my main hustle, as they say. So, but yeah, that's me.
Hey, I'm just going to add just a tad bit to it, just so everybody knows. I mean, call it bias or whatever you want, but yeah. So I was an E7, had just become an officer. I was a direct commission. I was the recon platoon leader, or PL. Patrick was one of my dudes. Always kept me on my toes, no doubt about it, making sure I was doing a good job. And then you just mentioned 20th Group. And so that's where I was before 9/11 happened. I was on the training team there in 20th Group. And Patrick, there was a couple of us, and, I'm an officer at that time. I actually should have been in Bray going through selection when I got the phone call saying, hey, do you want to come back to work for us at the agency? And I'm like, ugh. I may have even actually reached out to you, Patrick, and said, I don't know, man, what do you think? I want to have a family at some point. And then this is my last little, just taking us down the rabbit hole. But I just now fast forward. I remember I'm on some, yet again, another shithole part of the world on a mountain, people trying to kill me. And I'm like, hang on, how is this going to get me closer to a family as opposed to, being in the military still? So I don't know what happened there, but all right, enough of that. But that is kind of funny because, again, we really do have. And then the agency stuff. And then after I left, as a matter of fact, I think we got back in touch after I left the agency. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So a lot of shared background there, a lot of definite, moments, if it ain't raining, we're not training. If it doesn't suck, you got to embrace it a little bit harder, type of thing. So with Patrick, shared background there. And that's why I wanted to have Patrick come on, because I mean it very seriously. So really one of the best individuals that I've met in my whole life when it comes to planning, common sense, applying, and let's just be honest, boys and girls, it's the kind of stuff that I guarantee in your job or in your life, like there's either somebody you know who hates this or a boss hates it, because Patrick wants to do it the right way. And the right way, sometimes it is hard, right? And that's why you should probably do it. We don't do things because they're easy, right, Patrick?
That's
we
correct.
Yep. So is that maybe a good, just kind of lob that softball up there for you to knock it out of the park and take it running?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Okay.
I'll start off by kind of like going back to where you started with, the agency and family life and that type of stuff. Because if we're talking about resilience, you were at the ragged edge all the time, and that's just when you're that far out of balance. I mean, I don't care how badass you make somebody. You give them the highest level of training, you give them the best gear and equipment, but hey, man, that stuff, we're not meant to be gone that long. I mean, that's a heavy ask on a human being. So when they talk about service and sacrifice, I mean, that's it. I mean, you are literally sacrificing maybe not just your physical body, but your future life, and that's hard. I almost lost my family over that. So I'm grateful and blessed that I didn't lose them. But by all means, I think I should have. I mean, I'm blessed that they're still around.
Hey, just a quick interjection, 2 points on what you just said right there. I remember it's near the end of the farm. There's some kind of event taking place, and now some of people's spouses or significant others are kind of being exposed for the first time or whatever. Anyway, long story short, and I, like Patrick saying, I just lost a marriage kind of over all this stuff. And one of my lead instructors, right, because obviously you've got a cadre and lead instructor, and he just looks over at me, and he must have had the same experience, but from the agency side, he's like, so how many relationships did the military cost you? And I was like, well, how many did the agency cost you? And then Patrick, to your point, the resiliency, we're having a little fun talking about our backgrounds, but I know people in the civilian world, I'm a civilian now. I know people who are working god dang near combat hours. I mean, we're talking war zone. Like, here's somebody who's easily putting in, and I'm not making this up, 80, 90, 100 hours. And you probably know somebody who's doing the same thing too. So,
yep. Yeah, sure.
You, the person watching. Sorry, hey, I forgot. I didn't even do my own thing. Mute your phone, right? So,
yeah.
All right. Hey, but you see what I'm kind of saying? I don't want this just to sound, and my intention wasn't to make this just sound like, oh, we're talking about us. There's a ton of boys and girls out there who are going through that same thing right now. Like, so again, you're being rigid. Dude, imagine working 80 hours a week and having a wife and 2 kids, and if you're trying to get them to baseball and all that stuff. That's what I wanted to throw out there before I allowed my own mistake. Right there, see? There's planning and there's checklists, and I'm constantly been kind of rushing to get to these things. I didn't even do one of my own stupid checklist things tonight.
Hey, it gets us all, right? So, yeah. The thing that comes to mind too is we're talking about like just resiliency and just overall, readiness, preparedness, all these different topics we like to talk about. I mean, you see the words scrolling at the bottom of the screen, and Mark and I came up with that when he was forming his company, and we try to distill that into something that is like a little bit of a mantra that everybody can keep. I mean, listen, we all go through hardships. I go through, hardships on semi-regular basis. And I have to keep that stuff in mind, right? Because when you keep thinking, it means being open-minded, right? It means, hey, you know what? The world may be seemingly going to crap or whatever the case is. You may have issues at home. You have to keep thinking and not just thinking about yourself or how you feel, but how others feel. Maybe, just think about different points of view, and then overall what's going to be good for you in the situation, maybe, your family, the country, et cetera, from there. But that keep thinking is one of those key attributes. And I think if anything, and I'll ask you, Mark, when we're dealing with people at the agency or just intelligence professionals in general, I would say that probably the key attribute that people have is just genuine curiosity, right? Okay. And that forces you to think.
Yeah. If your curiosity, open-mindedness, because if you're open-minded, part of your curiosity is saying, well, I wonder if that guy's lying to me, or I wonder if that person's telling the truth. And whatever that is, it gets that ball rolling like, okay, now I need to vet this. I need to corroborate it. And I think it's the same thing. Again, I kind of want to bring this back into the real world for other people. like, hey, your boss is telling you to do something. And if
Yep.
you're closed-minded, you're okay. I mean, I guess if it's pretty if it's just linear, like, this is what we do, step 1, step 2, step 3. But if you have an open mind, Patrick, wouldn't you even think like, maybe you would say, hey boss, why don't we just like do step 2 last and we'd cut out 4 other steps or something like that. That's part of that whole keep thinking, right? You're not being a dick to be just to be a dick. You're like, no, there's a better way to do this, or your way doesn't work for me because I've got a bad rotator cuff, or I'm blind, or whatever the issue might be.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I've had this happen before to me, right? So on the military side, which I'm about to retire from the reserves, my rank is a warrant officer, and for those folks out there who don't understand, military structure, there's usually like the enlisted folks that go from like privates up to sergeant majors. And then on the officer side, from like, brand new lieutenants all the way up to general officers, right? Well, the warrant officers are the little group in between those two that are supposed to be, focused and I use this term lightly, subject matter experts, because I never feel like I'm an expert at anything, but pretty good. We're supposed to make, recommendations or give advice to certain commanders on how to shape operations. And when we do that, generally, the kind of like the format we follow, we'll give them 3 what we refer to as courses of actions, or 3 choices to make. And sometimes I'm really married to one of those because I put it together. I spent time, energy, researching that, putting it together, making sure that we had the right people, the right equipment, the right authority to do whatever it is we're doing. And this is the same thing in regular life, right? You want to, like, whether it's a sales company, an insurance company, something you sell service, whatever, somebody has a good idea of how you can move forward. Well, if the boss doesn't take it, hey, you might take that as a personal affront, like, oh, well, this boss is an idiot because he didn't listen to me. But you know what? They're the boss for the reason, for a reason. I don't know what that might be, but hey, they are. So don't take it personal. And that's a keep thinking thing right there that applies to everybody. My wife's a school teacher. I hear stuff all the time that the administration doesn't want to do that seemingly would make common sense, but they want to go in a certain direction. So there you go.
But just to that point though, but when you have, again, there's a lot of people in, like, so I'm just going to use centerline systems. There's a lot of people in this kind of outdoor, I don't want to just generalize it, right? Because what does that mean? Hunting, fishing, camping, those can be complete they're very different things potentially, right? So, but there are people that, who for whatever reason think canteens are military or it's camouflage. Like, that's one of the things that hit me at first. I'm pretty sure that's why Facebook wouldn't let me do ads over there, because, oh, that's scary and it's against our TOS. I'm like, no, it's not. Show me where it is. But so just to what I'm getting at here is, we're using some terms, but they shouldn't be scared. The military and that way of thinking, that mindset, has shaped so many other aspects of our life. If you don't like a canteen because you think a canteen is too military, okay, maybe that's your X factor, and you don't want to use anything that's military in nature. Well, then to Patrick's point, well, you're going to come up with different courses of action, different COAs, and you're going to have a decision making process. And you're like, okay, well, I don't want to do that because this. So then what are my recourses? What are my other options? I think that's I just wanted to highlight that and bring it into this way of thinking. Many people do it without even realizing it. And maybe you just haven't been formally trained, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater because we're talking military and intelligence operations here. It's the same shit down on the normal human level.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's nothing that can't be applied to day-to-day life. I mean, I do that to myself and my family and friends all the time. And that's just one example. But, instead of devolving into a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, I think that's a key attribute. Because when, as we get older, we tend to think, well, I've seen that, I've done that, I know this. You have people that defer to you because maybe you're older or you're in a certain position. If you buy that, then you're kind of cheating yourself. You should always be seeking to grow. And I don't care what that is. Maybe it's, it is in the outdoor world, hey, try something new. Maybe you've been doing something for years and, there's a new technique. I remember, this is a, kind of a cool guy thing, but I remember being shown the the C clamp grip, where you hold the, let me see if I can get myself in the camera, where you hold the front of the rifle like this, as opposed to holding on to, a broomstick, or basically like something that used to manipulate the weapon. And I thought, I don't know if that's going to work. And, I was proven wrong, right? Somebody showed me, they put me on a clock. They said, well, try this. And next thing I know, I fell in love with it. So, I mean, you've always got to look at yourself as a lifelong learner. And I think that, and no matter whatever that is. So that's huge. And that's why I like the keep thinking part of the motto.
Well, and I think that's also keep moving, because if you don't move, you're not constantly trying to do something different, open your horizons, then, what happens to things that don't move? They rust, they decay, they get, moss and, vegetation growth over them. I mean, so you got to keep moving. That's going to part of the whole keep thinking, keep moving, go try something new. You brought up, something that, a lot about, and that's, very much part of your life. Well, maybe you've never tried fly fishing. Or maybe you've never gone out and set up your own shelter outdoors, right? You always just car camp. Well, okay, well, maybe next time, enter into it, shui, a little bit by a little bit. Maybe you just take the kids out in the backyard one weekend and just set up a tent, and have fun doing that, and just camp outside and, get acclimated to it. I don't want to say baby steps, because I know somebody's saying baby steps are for babies. Well, and there's times where that's kind of true. And there's other times where no, baby steps make sense, because, maybe you do have some children. You just don't want to jump into, we're going to overland and, what is it called? What's the extreme one again, where they just ultralight? We're going to ultralight. Me and my 2 12-year-olds are going to do 40 miles in 2 days. That might be a little too much for a 12-year-old. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But, kind of see where I'm going with that, Patrick?
Oh, yeah. I would never have subjected my kids to that. That would just clearly have not worked. But, yeah, I think that's great. Hey, just like everything else, kind of like tying that to some military experience. Like a lot of guys were, hey, I'm getting ready for some training course. Let me throw 60, 70 pounds on my back. And the next thing you know, they've got like shoulder and back and knee issues, and they're wondering why that happened. It's like, yeah, you know what? You've got to condition yourself to that, and that doesn't matter what it is. You're that guy. I think I was too. I mean, hey,
no, you know the deal. I mean, I just had back and hip. Yeah, I mean, that shit catches up to you, dude, no matter what.
Yeah, so instead of like the term conditioning means something, it means conditioning your body to do something. And that means starting super light. And just like you said with the camping, I mean, you're acclimatizing your body to the stress of having extra weight on it and moving, maybe not in the same, pattern of steps that you take and that type of thing. Does it alter your gait? Or does that cause other issues? Yeah. So being smart about it, it takes time though. And some people just want to just jump right to it. So that's another thing with keep thinking. I think keep moving is, I equate that to actually staying active, right? Because I know I'm, mid 50s. I know you're probably there too, but it's very easy to make the comparison to like, well, I used to be able to, run with a rucksack. I used to be able to lift so much weight. I used to be able to run so fast. And, you apply that to, folks, I played high school sports too, but hey, I used to play football and I was this, I was that. Well, hey folks, that ship has sailed. Like, what are you going to do now? You've got to, just constantly look for new things, and don't ever make the mistake of comparing yourself to when you were younger and more spry and nimble and everything else, because that's just unfair. Instead, just keep moving. I can do something. Like one of my mentors, he's a retired Delta Force guy. He's fantastic, super spiritual guy, strong Christian. Hey, he goes for walks. He does yoga and Tai Chi, and you would think like, hey, that guy's a super killer ninja guy. He's out there doing that stuff. Like, yeah, he is, because you know what, those days are over. But he wants to have quality of life, and I think we should all take a lesson from that. Get out and walk and be healthy.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, do you mind? I mean, add a little bit of that, so somebody's saying, okay, that's great. Well, what's your recommendation? I mean, there shouldn't necessarily need to be one here. I mean, I think it's obvious, but maybe you can give just a few recommendations, right? Because you've got a lot of a background in this, again, that it doesn't mean you give up. Maybe you used to do 20 pull-ups. Maybe, your new goal is, okay, I'm going to start with 2, but I'm going to get back up to 12. or, you know what I'm saying? Like, what kind of ideas or recommendations on how to accomplish that, so you don't just turn into a rock with moss all over it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it's also important to look at, you've heard the term, and then there's several different shows on TV about this on Netflix and Nat Geo about, longevity, right? Longevity meaning, your lifespan. Well, there's lifespan, and then there's also what they call health span. Lifespan is, hopefully somebody listening to this has seen this stuff, but the lifespan of human beings right now is in maybe into the 80s, like upper 80s. So with, medicine and everything else, but the question becomes, what is the quality of life? So if you're sitting around guess what? I'm not doing anything, but I can live to be 80, 90 years old. What's my quality of life? If I'm sitting in a chair, that's not going to be good for your overall health. I'd rather have, a health span. So for me, I like to equate it to hey, what do you want to do? What are your hobbies? And find some hobbies, just kind of like what we talked about. I want to go climb up a mountain next year. So guess what? I have to do a lot of walking. I'm slowly adding stuff with a pack, and, I live in a very flat state, so I have to seek out terrain and steps and all this stuff to kind of get ready for that. That's a small example, or just being healthy. Like, there's so many studies out there that just talk about being outside, and that's awesome for this podcast because we're talking about outdoor gear. There's so many health benefits that come from that. Just having fresh air, walking around, also for your brain and the way your body's coordinated. If you're off the beaten path and you're walking through the woods, which is it may not be a strange phenomenon to the folks listening in here, but to a lot of Americans, it is like, why would I go walk through the woods? Is there a sidewalk through? No, there's not. You should, because that's what we're designed to do. The balance issues, everything else that makes that happen. So whatever it is, just get moving. You don't have to be in, SEAL team shape or anything like that. Just start slowly building up, your distance outside. Watch your food intake, eat clean food, which is becoming harder and harder because so much of our produce and meats are being, filled with all kinds of stuff. We got to be mindful of that. So that goes back to keep thinking. Don't just go to the store and throw some stuff in your cart. I mean, actually look at that stuff and figure out where it's coming from.
And just on that note, and being part of the outdoors, if this is something that you want to take on, and make into a new habit, or get back into the clean eating, there's so many GMOs and all this stuff, maybe one of the things you want to do, if you can do it, again, everybody's different, but maybe you can just have a small little garden in your backyard, raised gardens, grow some tomatoes, grow some herbs. Maybe you want to start fishing. Maybe you want to start, to what Patrick just said, I'm going to cut back on main supermarket manufactured beef, and I'm going to find the local guy where I can get a local cow, cut up, or maybe a local pig, or I'm going to start grouse hunting. I'm going to deer hunt. I'm going to bear hunt. I'm going to fish, whatever it is. I think people would be surprised if, once you actually eat clean meat. And so that, Evan, from one of the last times, he was talking about, he eats so clean right now, as far as his, his proteins are concerned, that actually having red meat from the grocery store tastes gamey. Like, that's gamey to him, because he's like, oh, what is all that? That's not natural. So
yeah,
you want to add a little bit more?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Think about how empowering that is, what you just said, right? If folks, number one, hey, if you're going out and you're supporting small, businesses in America, that's phenomenal right there. And if they're sourcing their meats from, grass-fed, sources, that's even better. Now, if you take it another step and actually get it yourself, there you go. There's more empowerment. The more self-sufficient you are, I think that just brings happiness and respect. If I order food and it shows up and it's sitting on my plate, I don't know where it came from. I might judge it on taste, but it's kind of hard to say, yeah, I'm really proud that I got this burger. I don't know where the hell that thing came from. But if I, bought the meat from a butcher, I'm looking forward to it because I know, hey, man, I supported that. I know this is coming from a clean source. Or if I, got the animal on my own and I've cleaned it and I'm doing it that way, that's even better. It's just, there's so much empowerment to doing each one of these steps. The other thing I'd say is on the keep moving. again, don't get crazy. Just walk, be outside. Being outdoors is, not just hanging out outdoors, but walking cross country. That's a workout in and of itself,
Yeah.
So just that's pretty much it. I mean, I think that so many people want to do this stuff, and folks, now is the time, because the healthier you are, the more likely you are to survive any kind of crisis. And I teach self-defense stuff on the weekends all over the country, and that's the number one thing I tell folks. The best thing you can do is, number one, have observational skills, pay attention to your environment, get off the phone. But then secondly, hey, put down Mountain Dew. If you're drinking soda and crap like that, that stuff just rots you from the inside out. Get rid of that. Drink water, drink clean things, eat clean food, and just move. That, I think that kind of encapsulates, that's my interpretation of keep moving, and just be smart about it. Make it fit whatever it is that you want to do, but being healthy long-term is the ultimate goal.
So you brought something up, and I'll let you decide which direction we go here. So I think no matter what a person's perspective is, and I'm not even talking politics. I mean, I guess you could maybe say it from politics, because maybe there is a correlation between, what you politically are, in support of. Maybe that does change your worldview. I don't know. That's total speculation. But all I'm trying to say is, I think what Patrick just said, no matter your political or ideological, there you go, or even cultural leanings, I think it's really difficult. You'd have a really hard time making an argument to me that the world's just really good right now. Everything's hunky-dory, right? So maybe, Patrick, I don't know if you want me to bring up the ODNI report, but I think one of the reasons I really wanted to have you to talk about resiliency, one, just everything you said, those couple books if we get a chance, but also just you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Even if the world was rainbows and unicorns right now, and you go out on a 5-mile, out and back hike, that could be the last hike you ever take in your life. And I know somebody's saying, oh, that's just fear porn clickbait. I'm like, really? That doesn't happen. That happens all the friggin' time. So you have to be prepared. It does. So take it everywhere from zombie apocalypse, which kind of looks like it might happen, to thermonuclear war, which really looks like it might happen, and you're not screwed necessarily if that's the case, to, Charlie Manson kicking in your door at midnight, and trying to steal all your shit. And that's so again, all the way to I'm out and I got bit by a rattlesnake, or, a deer, or I wiped out and fell down the ravine, and now my wife, or maybe it was my wife who fell down and I can't carry her all the way back. So I need my 14-year-old boy or girl to be able to stay with mom, set up shelter while I run 5 miles back to get cell phone service. You see where I'm going? The list is endless, right? So it's not just military, far end spectrum things, because look, and I'll plug us. We did this once on Mission Critical, and I'll do this over on Centerline here in the near future, but probabilities and consequences. But so, Patrick, I don't know if you want to maybe just talk a little bit about that and then kind of segue that into the books. I mean, because again, this isn't, we're not being wazoo here. This isn't like you said, this isn't some military thing. This applies to everybody under a wide variety of circumstances. And a lot of those circumstances are taking place today. That's what I was kind of getting at.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'll definitely chime in on that. So,
while you're doing it, I'm just going to share the report of the unclass, and then people can see they can see it while you're talking. Okay. I think that's probably a little bit too much detail for this, but people should go take a look at it and just see what your government is thinking about it.
I can hit the wave tops for sure. Yeah. So every year, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, who kind of like oversees every intelligence group in the government, and that was put in place after 9/11. For those that don't know, they come up with this annual threat assessment, and it's a kind of like they start hitting on our big adversaries, China, Russia, North Korea, so on and so forth. And you start reading this stuff, and this is open that they're sharing with us, kind of like, broad scope, but this stuff is very scary, stuff being stolen on our universities, cyber attacks being conducted within the United States. Now, you kind of couple that with, at conservative estimate of 11 million people that we don't know, much about them have come into the country claiming asylum. I would say that number is actually much higher. So with all of that being said, again, not to stay on the fear porn or anything like that, the potential for having some kind of negative interaction with a human being or human beings, plural, is much higher now, and it continues to rise. Not going to stay on anything political, but listen, when you've got universities all over the country and you've got these riots popping up left, right, and sideways, and now it's being shown that, what do you know, a lot of the folks that are leading these things and participating in the damage and destruction don't even go to the universities. What does that tell you? This is an attack on our stability in our country. You've got people chanting "Death to America," all this stuff. So that's the negative side. So I like to talk to people about, think about like an equation. Like there's the equal sign in the middle, and what I just gave you is one side of that equation. Well, folks, we're on the other side of that equation. So we could literally say, well, hey, the world's just a nasty place. What are you going to do? We're screwed. Or you could take the other approach and kind of take some of the first two tenets and keep thinking and keep moving. Prepare. The healthier you are, the better you are to deal with something. Keep thinking also forces you to play kind of like a what if game all the time. Hey, if I was driving, on some road on the outskirts of a city and the road's being blocked and people are being drug out of their vehicles and struck, well, geez, what do I do? Well, you're in a vehicle that could be used as a weapon. Are you worried about breaking the law? Are you worried about becoming somebody that ends up in a hospital or a morgue? These are questions to ask yourself. And the more you start doing that, it's not to scare anybody. It's not to turn people into psychos. But hey, what would I do if this happened? I mean, that's mental preparedness. You're building up a mental blueprint in case something happens. You've already kind of mentally been there. It's visualization. I think that's huge.
And just part of that, I mean, so that was the threat assessment. I mean, if, again, you should be thinking, hey, I'm going to drive downtown and there are protests going on, or there's this possibility. So maybe I don't want to drive on these main roads, or maybe I want to stay away from an embassy or whatever it is, a location where there's potential conflict. It's the same thing. Hey, I'm going to go for a 7-day camp hike. I'm going to 3 days worth of canoeing, 2 days at my final destination and 3 days of canoeing, with portages and overnights. It's the same damn thing. Well, okay, well, what happens if my canoe breaks? What happens, if I break a leg? What happens if I don't have cell phone communications? Do I have a spot? How do and you think through these what possibly could happen, so you can learn how to mitigate that. Oh, cell phones won't work, but I can get a spot beacon, and I can do it that way. Or there's a lot of grizzly bears there, and yeah, bear spray might work, but what would probably work better? A 10 millimeter or a long gun. Again, you do you, but it's that whole, you've got to think about it.
Yeah. And Mark, this could happen. This does happen to anybody. A good friend of mine, retired from the FBI, was visiting his daughter who was going to a school in another city, driving through. This was during 2021. The riots were going on. Yeah. He got stuck into that cocoon of, oh, well, I'm going to follow whatever the GPS says to tell me to get there. They drove right into a riot. They saw, people on motorcycles like running over cops. They saw stores being burned, windows broken. And I'm like, and he was obviously kind of scared and frightened, and he had his wife with him. And he was so ashamed of that afterwards, coming from a career in the FBI, to say, I screwed up. I didn't plan. I got caught in this hurry, my schedule. Well, we got to go here. We got to go there. And followed the GPS. And that's what happened. So, that's something that, it's a lesson for everybody. It can happen to anyone.
Hey, we're going to do more of this again in the future. I want to get to the books, but just to the point, and I would just want to reiterate, just in case there is somebody out there who's like, oh, you guys are fear mongering, fear porn, all whatever. I know 2 people who were down in Minneapolis when that all broke out, right? Same thing, what you're just saying. I was on the phone. I wasn't there with them. I was on the phone with them trying to help them do a map reconnaissance on how to avoid, and they were really close to the epicenter of how they could, and trying to talk them through about tripwires and triggers, if you will, like, and having bags packed and everything. Like, and I'm just bringing this up just because it doesn't matter whether it's the outdoors, whether it's zombies or Martian invasion. The worst time to prepare for a crisis is when you're in the middle of it. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Yeah.
Patrick Brett, 35 minutes. Should we talk a little bookage?
Yeah, let's bring up a book. If you want to bust one out, or I've got my recommendation.
Well, so we're talking resiliency.
Yep.
My first book really has nothing to do with resiliency, but it's a lot of mindset, right? And there's some kind of interesting concepts in this. Robert Heinlein, Starship Troopers. Don't watch the movie. Their animated cartoons actually are a little bit more in line with the world that he created, but Robert H. Heinlein, Starship Troopers. But then for your daily dose of getting the mind straight and keeping that mental resiliency, no matter what it is you're doing, Hagakure right there. I think everybody can see it.
Yeah.
Hagakure, you can find it in a bunch of different places. You know, get out and read that stuff, underline, and just, those are quick, easy books that I think really kind of, for me, you know, I read this so many years ago as a kid, and there's still facets of this that still come in. It's a great science fiction story, but there's some nice little gems in there about resiliency, because basically the human race is on its heels and we might all die, right? So that's a little bit of resiliency, right? Keep thinking, keep moving, never quit. And this is just daily anecdotes taken from a whole bunch of different individuals throughout the, you know, feudal Japan, samurai, Bushido area. And it's just like, it's like a little textbook for how people are supposed to think. So those are my two for the day, sir. What do you got?
Yeah. Well, closely related to that, I'll also stick with the Japanese thing. And I think this one is, for everybody can see that.
Here, I'll bring you up full screen.
Yeah.
No, there you go. Now you got it.
No, that's mandatory reading for anybody who wants to improve pretty much in anything. So, you know, a lot of folks talk about Sun Tzu's Art of War, and I think I like that book a lot too. I think it's a, you know, obviously a classic, but I think that looks at warfare in like a larger setting, right? Like what you should do with troops, and, you know, these different strategies and things like that. That's at the big army level type thing. This is more for you, the individual, and what you can do. And the reason that I'm a huge believer in this book is it forces you to, if you follow its tenets, it forces you to take personal responsibility for what you're doing and take pride in what you're doing, and not minimize it. Because I think that, you know, a lot of times people are like, well, you know, I mean, and especially in the world of firearms, well, I got this gun, and, you know, I take it out, and I haven't been to the range in, you know, 3 weeks. And, you know, I said, well, you know, I haven't been to the range in, you know, like 3 months, but I draw, you know, the weapon, I dry fire it, and I practice, you know, moving my body with it, you know, at least probably, you know, 5 to 10 minutes, you know, a week. It's a small investment, but it keeps the blade sharp, so to speak. So phenomenal. It's very empowering, and it changes your way of thinking. I like that a lot. My other one that I'm kind of like halfway through, this was recommended to me by a friend from the agency. And I wish I would have read this years ago. It's called The Way and the Power by Frederick Lovre. Phenomenal book. Also kind of, you know, focuses.
Hey, can you just put that back up there? Because I won't be able to type that one. I'm not. Matter of fact, you got to like send me a link for that as well.
Yeah, I will.
Or I'll go back and look. I'm going to look that up myself. The Way and the Power, Frederick Lovre. Got it.
Yeah, phenomenal book. It also, you know, once again, you know, it talks about, you know, Japanese society and the difference between like the different, you know, portions of their society, and then the samurai class being so small. Everybody talked about the samurai class like, oh, everybody was one of those. No, that very, very small percentage. And like less than 10%. So, and I think even within then it was smaller. So, a lot was written, but these were not that many people. So that kind of like adds to it as well. And, you know, there's a lot of comparisons to that type of, you know, time frame, that mindset to our folks, you know, in special operations and on the intel side, that we try to focus on. And, you know, we kind of, I think we'd like to harken back to those days. Societies have drastically changed, but guess what? You can personally still adopt some of those tenets. And some of the best people I've known, and, you know, I'll blow some smoke, Mark, you're one of them. You know, we live by a code, and when somebody tells you, hey, I'm going to do something, you know, hey, I don't have to wonder about this. They're going to do it. I know that guy's going to do it. His word, you know, is his bond. It means gold, or it's gold. So that's powerful, you know. So,
well, anyway, that's also resiliency, just kind of bringing it back full circle. I mean, if you really think about it, you know, like, yeah, you know, Or another version of that would be, you know, if you can't do it, and how often do we see this in our everyday? Like, I just had it happen, you know, like, okay, I volunteer to help somebody do something, and then they change their mind, and there's not a phone call, a text, you know, I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm not going to do that now. I'm like, and you didn't tell me, and so you know, like, dude, that's to me, that's not a very flexible, that's not a very resilient person. I can still be resilient and flexible and say, oh, okay. But the point being is like, yeah, but I just did 2 days of prep, or I was, you know, like thinking on this, right? So, you know, like you said, if you're resilient and if things change in your life, you just roll with it. Mafi mushkila, you know, wait, no problems, man. I'm just going to deal with this. Hey, Patrick, yeah, I just had some shit happen, and now I'm just going to have to deal with a flat tire. So no live stream today. That's all it takes.
Yep. Yeah. Or, hey, guess what? You know what? This is also something where you put boundaries around your time and what's important. You know, if you've got, I work all day. If like the guys that, you know, have issues, you know, with family or marriages and that type of thing, that gals too, that become workaholics. Oh, that sounds really good to the people that work. Oh, that guy works all the time, but yeah, his home life is trash. So is he resilient? He's just running. He's basically staying at work to hide from, you know, his spouse or his family. That's not good. And I know plenty of folks like that, and I know you do too, Mark. I know those folks from law enforcement. I know those folks from the agency, military, everybody. And I'm sure it's in every facet of society. So that's not being resilient. That's running and hiding from your problems. But being able to put boundaries around things that are important to you, like, hey, you know, we do this all the time with this podcast. Hey, are you available this night? No, I'm not available. I got to do this, that, or the other. And we're good with it because we know when we show up, it's going to be, you know, a full-hearted effort, right? So that's another good takeaway from these books, is like honoring your own time and spending time versus wasting time. And I think that's the number one thing that these things ruin, is that they force you to waste time. They just, you know, they're designed to just suck your soul. Oh, hey, I'm interested in that. I'll just keep scrolling. Next thing you know, 3-4 hours is gone and you've been completely unproductive. And guess what? The bad guys win because that's what they want.
Well, and on that note, I'm just smiling. I don't know if you saw me smiling. You know, I'm trying to keep these at a little close to 30. We're at 40 minutes right now. But there's just, again, you know, but the other, just like on Mission Critical, there's just so much to talk about there. You know, it's hard to, okay, here's a little nugget. Now we'll revisit that maybe 2 weeks later, right? So you know, my natural, you know, kind of inclination is, if I'm here and committing this time, I want to put forward, like you just said, I want to put forth, you know, my best effort 100%. And that's hard to do in 30 minutes. It just is. I mean, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and so on that note, let me give you final comments. You know, anybody who's watching, if you've got a question or a comment, you could have chimed in anytime, but if you want to chime in now, I missed 2 people last time because when I say goodbye, there is definitely a time lag. So 2 people's comments came in at the very end. I apologize. I try to read everybody's comments and pop them up there. But as Patrick takes us out, leave a comment, and if I can get it in time, I'll get it up there. But you know, we've got next Monday live guest, another guest, a small business owner. Thursday, that's the next Thursday, a week from today, that's the announcement of the charity auction that we're going to do for Readiness Training Group. Stay tuned on that. That's all I got for housekeeping on my side, unless somebody brings a comment up. Well, here's one, and then I'll let you kind of see that. Maybe respond. Gene from across the pond, by the way, woo. Gene, lots of information, some resources for me to look in. Thank you. You're more welcome, Gene. That's why we're doing it, right? Yep. So, Patrick, what do you got? And I'll bring up any other comments that come in.
All right. I'll just end it up. You know, I have my little tagline there that says pro-American. It doesn't just mean that I'm obviously pro-America. I love America. I've given, you know, a lot of time, effort, and energy and blood and sweat and tears to it. But, you know, it's also dual meaning, right? So I'm a pro-American. I'm a professional American. So that's why, you know, my age, I still take care of myself. I still try to, you know, engage with as many people as I can, look out for, you know, all my friends and colleagues and family. You know, we've got to do that, right? That's something that, you know, we can sit back and espouse beliefs, but hey, life's a team sport. And if you're not spreading that love and, you know, good sentiment with folks, and all you do is sit around and gripe and complain, you're kind of part of the problem. So, so stand up and start bringing people together. That's we're the United States. Let's unite again. Okay.
I like that. It's going to be too late. All right. I was just going to try to put up on the ticker. Life is a team sport, but now we're at the end. Hey, yeah. Patrick, as always, thank you very much. Hang on just for a couple seconds when we end it. I'm going to just kind of drone for a second. I don't have any other comments coming in. So for everybody who did join us here again tonight, very much appreciate just to what we're saying, that you are taking the time out of your life to either learn something, see little sneak things about gear that might make your life better, or to just broaden your horizons, right? So really definitely appreciate it. And we'll see you guys on Monday of next week. Got a very, I don't want to say it yet because, like we just said, if the gentleman has to change at the last second, well, I've got to be flexible. So, but we've got some guests coming on here in the next couple of weeks. So just stay tuned. And then don't forget, next Thursday, I'll be announcing the charity auction that we're doing for Readiness Training Group. As always, everybody, you know the deal. Reach out. I'll do the best I can to help you out. Until then, all right, and Patrick, hang on a second. Until then, everybody, Gene and everybody else from across the pond or wherever you are, I'm going to give you a big woo here at the end, but keep thinking, keep moving, never quit. All right, everybody, we'll see you next time. Be good.